Hello everyone, it's Seji and today I will be talking about Blue Flowers by Carola Saavedra. A huge thank you to Riverhead Books for gifting me a copy. This was translated from the Brazilian Portuguese to the English by Daniel Han. The story follows a man named Marcus who recently moved into a new apartment after divorcing his wife. Feeling alienated from his ex-wife, his daughter, and the rest of society, everything just feels flat and fake to him. Then suddenly at his new apartment, he starts receiving letters from an anonymous and troubled woman who signs off as A. It's clear that these letters are meant for the former tenant, her ex-lover, who she refers to as my darling. As Marcus starts reading these letters, it becomes painfully apparent that this was an intense and turbulent relationship that ended in the same way. Marcus, however, falls under the spell of A and for the first time in years actually is moved. Intoxicated by her words, he's driven to find out her identity. What a story. This was such an amazing novel and it was both dark and enthralling. The book spans about 9 days and contains 9 letters, each for one day, and I was sucked in from the start, really. The book starts off with A's first letter and you immediately get hit with A's intense character. My darling, they say separation is never one single moment. It's never abrupt. They say a separation starts inside out. It's precisely at the moment of greatest sweetness, at the first meeting, at the first look, that a separation begins to exist. I prefer to believe a separation never ends, and the last day, the last night, is a moment that is repeated again and again with every return, every time I feel your absence, every time I speak your name. I believe that when I call out to you, I should be able to make you turn and look, and without realizing it, create a bridge between us. A's prose is incredibly flowery and philosophical, almost extending to the transcendental. And that really worked for me. The letters were so vivid and I almost felt intoxicated by them. All of them had this quality to them, and the more I read, the more I started to notice the sort of dark, emotional and erratic undertone they all had. It felt like A was very much on edge, as if she was on the verge of a breakdown. The letters really read like spoken word. There is a lot of repetition and backtracking, and it felt as if A just sat down and wrote whatever was on her mind or what was weighing on her heart and just sent it without looking back. She also speaks very candidly about all the aspects in the relationship, and so you also quickly come to notice that something was really off. In the first letter she writes, "This is my attempt at preventing you from getting up, going over to shut the window or even answering the phone. The phone might ring, someone might wave from the balcony opposite, the insistent noise of the telephone, but still you sit there, apart, silent, this letter in your hands that I fear and I also love, and that I wish were now gentle." The letters were so intimate to a point that even I started to get uncomfortable. I felt like I was intruding on something that was so incredibly personal and private. It feels like it's the same thing like if you're in public, like in a coffee shop or something, and you hear a couple quarreling and you're low-key listening in. You know you shouldn't do it, but you still do. It's kind of like that. Anyway, where A is filled with emotion, Marcus is almost apathetic. It was as if all of his feelings were struck away save for his resentment towards women. From what I understood, it seems like there was just a moment in his life in which he just snapped, which totally removed him socially from the world, and so he wasn't able to connect to any of the people with whom he interacted with in this novel, except of course for A. In the book there are a few passages in his life which makes you feel like there's also something off with him. For instance, when he's talking about his daughter who is just a toddler, he felt incapable. Something about her intimidated him. He had felt that way ever since the beginning, when she was just a dislocated baby placed into his arms in the maternity ward. He held the baby for the first time one day after the birth. As his ex-wife liked to recall, he was the only man who'd managed to take 24 hours to get to the hospital, which was only 10 minutes away from home. He had never been able to explain what had happened. The truth was, he couldn't remember. He couldn't remember, he had told his wife. She hadn't said as much, but it was clear she would never forgive him, and she never did. Women can be terribly resentful. That was his conclusion. These type of small oddities were sprinkled all over the book, which made it even darker. They are told with a wave of the hand, once mentioned and then never again, like it wasn't a huge deal. But that for me planted all types of conspiracy theories as to what was really going on. Either way, it was so twisting, yet so interesting to see how this woman managed to conjure something deep within Marcus, something that made him so desperate to connect with her. And honestly, it's also off because what she writes is so disturbing. I mean, the imagery she creates around her abuse is so expressive, yet it's done so cleverly without being explicit, and I think that's such brilliant writing. I had no idea where this novel was going towards. Would Marcus be able to find A? Would he return the letters to the rightful owner? Is A's lover even still alive? I had no freaking idea, and at the end I was just shocked, utterly baffled. So many questions were racing through my mind, and it was just done in such a brilliant way. It's actually been a couple of weeks since I read this, but every time I sort of revisit it in my mind, I always manage to find another piece to the puzzle or something that I thought was just so extremely clever. So yes, it's safe to say that I would highly recommend this book. Either way, that's everything I had to say with regards to Blue Flowers. Let me know if you're excited for the book, if you've already read it. I always love reading your comments. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you have not already, and I will see you in the next video. A huge thank you to Klavek, Chris, Diane, Jen, Nikolai and Tara for supporting me over on Patreon.